Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to travel back in time to ancient India.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
It is. We're going to explore the Mauryan Empire.
Ah, the Mauryans, a classic.
And whether you're, gearing up for the UPSC exam
Right.
and tackling that ancient history section,
Mm.
or just, curious about this pivotal period, get ready for a journey
Right.
filled with imperial intrigue, surprising facts, and hopefully,
Yeah.
a deeper understanding of this fascinating chapter in Indian history.
You got it. The Mauryan Empire is really a cornerstone of Indian history.
Okay.
It's the first time we see a single power unifying
Wow.
such a massive expanse of the subcontinent,
Right.
and it really sets the stage for so many developments that followed.
Okay, so let's get oriented.
Okay.
The Mauryan Empire spanned from 321 BCE to 185 BCE.
Right.
Is that right?
That's right.
We're talking about a significant chunk of territory here.
Yeah.
From present-day Bihar in Nepal
Mm-hmm.
all the way to parts of the Deccan. I mean, this is truly pan-Indian in scope.
Absolutely. And to piece together the story of this empire,
Yeah.
we have a remarkable collection of sources.
Oh, cool.
Like, think about Kautilya's Arthashastra,
Okay.
which gives us a peek into the minds of the Mauryan rulers,
Really?
Yeah, it covers everything from statecraft and economics to military strategy.
Wow.
It's a real treasure trove of information for understanding their administrative prowess.
It's like having a handbook for running an empire.
Exactly. And then we have the Ashokan inscriptions.
Okay.
These edicts carved on pillars and rocks throughout the empire.
Right.
They're like a direct line to Emperor Ashoka himself,
Oh, wow.
revealing his policies, his thoughts on governance,
Interesting.
and even his personal transformation, which we'll get into a little bit later.
So we have this intriguing blend of, political theory from the Arthashastra
Yeah.
and a more personal, almost philosophical perspective from Ashoka's edicts.
Precisely. And don't forget accounts like Megasthenes Indica. Megasthenes was a Greek ambassador to the Mauryan court.
Oh, wow.
So he provides an outsider's perspective
Right.
on Indian society and culture during that time.
Right.
You also have archaeological remains,
Right.
particularly from Pataliputra,
Okay.
the empire's capital,
With-
offering tangible glimpses into their world.
It's like assembling a puzzle using these different sources
Yeah.
to get a more complete picture.
You got it.
So where does the story of this grand empire begin?
Well, it all starts with a name that resonates through Indian history.
Okay.
Chandragupta Maurya, the founder of the dynasty.
Right.
He ruled from 321 to 297 BCE
Okay.
and was clearly a man of ambition and vision.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the context, right?
Yeah.
Alexander the Great's conquests had just shaken the world.
Right.
And it's likely that Chandragupta was, inspired by what he saw.
So he was stepping onto the scene at a time of major upheaval and opportunity.
Yes, and he seized that opportunity.
Wow.
He overthrew the Nanda dynasty who ruled in Magadha, a strategically important region in eastern India.
Right.
That victory laid the foundation for what would become the vast Mauryan Empire.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't stop there.
What else did he do?
Well, he went head-to-head with Seleucus Nicator.
Okay.
Remember Seleucus? He was one of Alexander's generals
Right.
who had inherited a portion of Alexander's vast empire after his death.
Gotcha.
Chandragupta's conflict with Seleucus was,
Yeah.
a clash of titans in a way.
So did Chandragupta defeat Seleucus?
He didn't defeat him in battle,
Okay.
but what he did was arguably even more impressive.
What's that?
He negotiated a treaty with Seleucus in 303 BCE.
Okay.
This treaty not only secured additional territories for the Mauryan Empire,
Yeah.
but also demonstrated Chandragupta's diplomatic skills
Oh, wow.
and strategic thinking.
Yeah.
He knew when to fight and when to negotiate, a hallmark of a truly great leader.
It's like he was playing a game of chess on a grand scale, thinking several moves ahead.
That's a great way to put it. And here's something else that might surprise you.
Okay.
We know that Greek historians resided in Chandragupta's court.
Really?
Think about what that means,
Yeah.
Cultural exchange, intellectual dialogue, perhaps even the sharing of ideas about governance and philosophy between these two very different worlds.
That's fascinating.
Moxie.
Just a level of openness and intellectual curiosity. That's
Right.
especially for that time period. It's impressive.
Indeed. And later in life, Chandragupta took a very different path.
Oh,
He renounced his throne and embraced Jainism,
wow.
a testament to his spiritual inclination
Okay.
and his willingness to relinquish power
Hmm.
in pursuit of a different kind of fulfillment.
From conquering kingdoms to seeking inner peace, what a story.
Yeah, he truly set a high bar for his successors.
He did.
His son, Bindusara, who ruled from 297 to 273 BCE,
Okay.
continued the legacy of expansion.
Okay.
He's even known as Amitragata,
Hmm.
which means slayer of enemies. Clearly a powerful figure in his own right.
Yeah.
Under Bindusara, the empire expanded further into the Deccan region,
Hmm.
consolidating its hold over a vast swath of the subcontinent.
Okay, so we have military might, diplomatic strategy, and expansion under Bindusara.
That's right.
What comes next in the Mauryan saga?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Ooh, I like interesting.
Bindusara's son, Ashoka,
Oh.
who ruled from 272 to 232 BCE,
Mm-hmm.
is perhaps the most famous
Right.
and certainly the most intriguing of the Mauryan emperors.
Okay.
His story is one of profound transformation,
Should say.
from ruthless conqueror to compassionate advocate for peace.
A real turning point, it sounds like.
You got it.
What led to such a dramatic shift?
It all began with the Kalinga War,
Right.
a brutal conflict that Ashoka waged early in his reign.
Okay.
Kalinga was a powerful independent state
Mm.
on the eastern coast of India,
Right.
and conquering it was a major victory for Ashoka.
Yeah.
But the bloodshed and suffering he witnessed during that war, oh wow.
Deeply affected him.
So it was a victory that came at a tremendous cost, both for Kalinga and for Ashoka's own conscience.
Exactly. It prompted a profound moral reckoning.
Okay.
Ashoka renounced violence and embraced Buddhism,
Wow.
dedicating the rest of his reign to spreading the message of Dhamma.
Duh.
Think of Dhamma as a universal code of conduct, emphasizing compassion, nonviolence, tolerance, and respect for all living beings.
So this wasn't just a personal conversion for Ashoka.
Right.
He actually made Dhamma a central part of his governance.
Yes. And here's where those Ashokan inscriptions we talked about earlier become so important.
Okay.
Ashoka used them to communicate his message of Dhamma directly to his people,
Really?
carving them on pillars and rocks across the empire.
That's incredible. It's like a massive public campaign for ethical living.
Exactly. These inscriptions weren't just propaganda.
Right.
They were meant to guide people towards a more just and compassionate way of life.
It's a remarkable example of a ruler using his power to promote peace and ethical behavior.
So we have this image of Ashoka, the once ruthless conqueror, now urging his subjects to live ethically, to embrace nonviolence. What can you tell us about what life was actually like under Mauryan rule, particularly during Ashoka's time?
Okay.
What kind of administration did they have? How did the economy function?
Well, the Mauryan Empire was known for its well-organized and centralized administrative structure.
Okay.
Think of it as a vast network of officials responsible for everything,
Wow.
from revenue collection and trade to agriculture and infrastructure.
Right.
Each part of the empire had its own set of officials ensuring the smooth functioning of the state.
It sounds incredibly complex, especially for that era.
It was, and this efficient administrative system was key to the empire's success.
Okay.
We even know the names of some of these key officials from our sources.
Oh, cool.
Like the Samharta, the revenue collector,
Right.
and the Sanatata, the treasurer. They played crucial roles in managing the empire's resources and ensuring its stability.
So they had a clear hierarchy and a division of labor within the administration.
Yes.
What about their economy? What was it based on?
The Mauryan economy was primarily agrarian,
Okay.
with land revenue forming the backbone of their income. But they weren't just focused on agriculture.
Okay.
They had a diverse range of crops,
Right.
a flourishing trade network, both within the empire and with the outside world,
Wow.
and important trading centers like Taxila.
So they were connected to the wider world through trade.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they recognized the importance of maintaining these trade routes and ensuring the smooth flow of goods and ideas.
Right.
Think of the cultural exchange we mentioned earlier that was facilitated in part by these vibrant trade networks.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit, what can you tell us about social structures during the Mauryan period?
Okay.
Was society rigidly hierarchical? Were there any surprising aspects to social life that might challenge our assumptions about ancient India?
That's a great question. Our friend Megasthenes, the Greek ambassador,
Right.
described Indian society as being divided into 7 occupational groups.
7.
You have philosophers and priests at the top,
Okay.
followed by warriors,
Mm-hmm.
then farmers, herdsmen, artisans,
Right.
and finally, hunters and gatherers.
Gotcha.
These occupations were often hereditary, meaning you typically followed in your father's footsteps.
So not a lot of room for career changes, it seems.
True, but there are some nuances to consider.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that women,
Oh,
particularly those in higher social strata,
right.
enjoyed a relatively high status and had certain freedoms that might surprise us today.
Okay, like what?
They could participate in religious ceremonies,
Okay.
receive education,
Uh-huh.
and even had the right to divorce and remarry.
Wait, divorce and remarriage were options back then?
Yes, indeed. And this challenges some of the common perceptions we might have about ancient societies.
Yeah.
The Mauryan period, particularly under Ashoka's influence,
Right.
saw a shift towards a more inclusive
Right.
and arguably more progressive view of women's roles in society.
It's fascinating how these historical details can challenge our assumptions and broaden our understanding of the past.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that history is full of surprises.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
They have.
We've explored the rise of the Mauryan Empire, the key figures like Chandragupta, Bindusara, and the fascinating Ashoka, their administrative achievements,
Right?
and even some intriguing glimpses into their social structures.
Uh-huh.
Where do we go from here?
Okay.
What's next on our journey through the Mauryan Empire?
Well, next we'll delve into what happened after Ashoka's reign.
Okay.
We'll explore the factors that led to the eventual decline of this once mighty empire
Interesting.
and examine its lasting legacy on Indian history and culture.
Okay, sounds good.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive.
All right. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Mauryan Empire.
Thanks for having me back.
When we left off, we were talking about Ashoka's, incredible transformation
Right.
and the impact of his Dhamma.
Yeah,
It seemed like he'd set a pretty high standard for anyone coming after him.
he did. And, as we often see in history,
Yeah.
even the greatest empires eventually faced decline after Ashoka's death in 232 BCE.
Okay.
The Mauryan Empire, it began to unravel,
Oh.
ultimately collapsing in 185 DCE.
So what factors contributed to this downfall? Was it internal strife, external pressures, or maybe, a combination of both?
It was a complex interplay of forces,
Okay.
both internal and external,
Right.
internally.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges was the weakening of central authority after Ashoka's death.
Okay.
You had a series of rulers,
Right.
none quite as strong or influential as Ashoka,
Good.
and the empire started to fragment.
Hmm.
Different regions began asserting their independence.
And the central power struggled to maintain control.
So it's like the glue that held this vast empire together
Yeah.
started to lose its grip.
Exactly.
And with this power vacuum
Yeah.
came opportunities for corruption within the administrative system.
Right.
Those officials we talked about earlier, the revenue collectors, the treasurers, without a strong central figure like Ashoka to keep them in check,
Yeah.
there was a greater chance for, personal gain to take precedence over the empire's well-being.
Unfortunately, that happens sometimes.
That's never a good sign.
Nope.
So we have these internal cracks appearing.
Yeah.
What about external pressures?
Sure.
Were there any invasions or threats from outside forces that contributed to the decline?
While our sources don't explicitly detail major invasions during this period,
Okay.
it's highly likely that external pressures played a role.
How so?
Imagine neighboring kingdoms, seeing a weakened Mauryan empire
Yeah.
and seizing the opportunity to expand their own territories.
Or perhaps nomadic groups testing the empire's defenses,
Well,
sensing an opportunity to gain a foothold?
it's like a pack of wolves sensing vulnerability in their prey.
That's a good analogy. And on top of these political and military challenges,
Yeah.
there were economic factors at play, too.
Okay.
We talked earlier about how metal was essential.
Right, for tools, weapons, and infrastructure.
Exactly. Well, evidence suggests that the state's control over metal resources might have declined during this period.
That must have had a significant impact,
Oh, yeah.
like suddenly running low on essential supplies.
Exactly. It would have affected everything,
Right.
from agricultural production to the empire's ability to defend itself.
Wow.
And there's also evidence to suggest that deforestation played a role in the empire's economic decline.
Deforestation. How so?
Well, as the empire expanded and the population grew, they needed more land for agriculture,
Okay.
so they cleared forests,
Right.
which in the short term might have seemed like a good solution,
Yeah.
but over time,
Yeah.
Deforestation can lead to soil erosion,
Okay.
flooding,
Right.
and even changes in local climate patterns.
Wow.
All of which can negatively impact agricultural productivity.
So it's a reminder that even, seemingly simple actions
Right.
can have unintended consequences, especially when we're talking about the environment and large-scale changes to the landscape.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these factors, the political instability, the potential for corruption, the external pressures, the economic challenges, they were all interconnected.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one thing that brought down the Mauryan Empire.
Okay.
It was a perfect storm of challenges that they ultimately couldn't weather.
But even though the empire declined and eventually collapsed,
Right.
it must have left a lasting impact, right?
It did.
After all, it was the first major pan-Indian empire,
Exactly.
covering such a vast area and influencing so many people.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's impossible to overstate the Mauryan Empire's significance in Indian history. It set a precedent for centralized governance and sophisticated administrative systems
Right.
that influenced later Indian empires.
Right.
Think of the Mughal Empire, for example, centuries later.
Oh.
They drew inspiration from the Mauryan model of governance.
It's like they laid the groundwork for the future of Indian administration.
That's a great way to put it.
And they were pioneers in infrastructure development.
They were.
Think of the roads they built,
Ugh.
connecting different parts of the empire, facilitating trade and communication.
Right.
They also developed irrigation systems
Yes.
that helped boost agricultural productivity.
Absolutely.
These were significant achievements that had long-term benefits for the subcontinent.
They did.
So they weren't just focused on conquest and expansion.
Right.
They were also investing in the long-term development of their territories.
Exactly. And perhaps their most enduring legacy,
Yeah.
the one that continues to resonate even today,
Okay.
is the impact of Ashoka's Dhamma. His emphasis on nonviolence, compassion, and social justice inspired generations of thinkers, reformers, and even political leaders in India.
It's incredible to think that his message still holds relevance after more than 2 millennia.
It speaks to the power of ideas
Yeah.
and their ability to transcend time and place.
So for those of you listening who might be preparing for the UPSC exam,
Yes.
remember that the decline of the Mauryan Empire
Mm-hmm.
is just as important to understand as its rise.
You got it.
Pay attention to these factors we've discussed.
Right.
The internal and external pressures, the economic challenges,
Yeah.
and the weakening of central authority.
Absolutely.
Think about how these factors interacted
Yes.
and ultimately led to the empire's downfall.
Exactly.
And for those of you who are simply, history enthusiasts,
Right.
I think the Mauryan Empire offers valuable lessons
It does.
about the complexities of power, the challenges of governance, and the enduring impact of ideas.
It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of dates and names.
Right.
It's a story of human ambition, struggle, and ultimately the search for a more just and compassionate world.
Well said. And speaking of a more just and compassionate world,
Okay.
there's another figure from the Mauryan era
Oh.
that often gets overlooked,
Okay.
but whose story is worth exploring.
I'm listening.
Samprati.
Samprati. Okay.
He ruled a portion of the empire after Ashoka,
Mm.
and his reign offers a unique perspective on religious diversity and tolerance during this period.
That's right.
So we'll dive into that in the next and final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned. All right, you've piqued my curiosity. Who was this Samprati, and why is he often overlooked in the, grand narrative of the Mauryan Empire?
Well, Samprati was the grandson of Ashoka.
Okay.
And he ruled a portion of the empire from around 224 to 215 BCE.
Okay.
His reign is particularly interesting for what it reveals about, religious diversity and the impact of individual rulers, even when they're not as famous as someone like, Ashoka.
So how did Samprati's rule differ from Ashoka's, especially when it comes to religion?
Right.
We talked about Ashoka's embrace of Buddhism and his promotion of Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
What was Samprati's focus?
Well, Samprati was a devout Jain.
Okay.
And during his rule, he actively championed the spread of Jainism throughout his territories. He's even been compared to Ashoka and his dedication to his faith and his efforts to promote its principles.
So even though the Mauryan Empire was founded by Chandragupta, who ultimately embraced Jainism himself,
Right.
it was his great-grandson, Samprati,
Yeah.
who really made a concerted effort to, promote Jainism on a larger scale.
That's right. And it's fascinating because it shows that even within a single dynasty, you can have very different approaches to religion and governance.
Right.
Ashoka focused on Buddhism and Dhamma,
Right.
a more universal ethical code,
Right.
while Samprati focused specifically on promoting Jainism.
It adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of the Mauryan Empire.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a monolithic entity with one rigid set of beliefs.
Exactly. It was a dynamic period with diverse religious influences and rulers who made very different choices about how to, engage with those influences. And it's important to note that both Ashoka and Samprati, while dedicated to their respective faiths, also exhibited a degree of tolerance towards other beliefs.
So religious pluralism wasn't just an abstract concept. It was a lived reality during the Mauryan period.
Yes, and that's something that often gets overlooked in our historical narratives.
Right.
We tend to simplify the past.
Yeah.
But the Mauryan Empire, with its blend of Buddhist, Jain, and even Ajivika influences, reminds us that ancient India was a place of vibrant intellectual and religious exchange.
So we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into the Mauryan Empire.
You have.
Its rise, its key rulers, its administrative achievements, its eventual decline, and the fascinating stories of figures like Ashoka and Samprati. What are the key takeaways for our listeners, especially those who might be preparing for the UPSC exam?
Well, I think the most important thing is to approach the Mauryan Empire not just as a collection of facts and dates,
Right.
but as a complex and dynamic period that shaped the course of Indian history.
Okay.
You need to understand its significance on multiple levels.
Yeah.
The political and military achievements, the administrative innovations,
Right.
the cultural and intellectual exchanges, the religious diversity, and the impact of key individuals like Chandragupta, Ashoka, and Samprati.
Right. It's about seeing the connections between, different aspects of the empire.
Yes.
And understanding how they contributed to its overall significance.
Exactly. And for the UPSC aspirants,
Yeah.
remember to delve into the details.
Okay.
Pay close attention to the Arthashastra for insights into Mauryan administration and political thought. Analyze the Ashokan inscriptions for a deeper understanding of Ashoka's policies and his philosophy of Dhamma. And don't neglect figures like Samprati, whose reign sheds light on the empire's religious diversity.
Great advice. And for those of you who are just, history enthusiasts,
Yeah.
I think the Mauryan Empire offers a fascinating glimpse into a pivotal period in India's past.
It does.
It challenges our assumptions,
Right.
expands our understanding of ancient societies, and reminds us that history is full of surprises and complexities.
Absolutely.
So as you continue your exploration of the Mauryan Empire, here's a final thought to ponder. How did the empire's legacy, particularly Ashoka's emphasis on Dhamma, influence the development of political and ethical thought in India? It's a question that continues to spark debate and discussion even today.
That's an excellent point. It reminds us that history isn't just about the past. It's about the ongoing dialogue between the past, present, and future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Mauryan Empire. We hope you've gained new insights and a deeper appreciation for this fascinating chapter in Indian history. Until next time, keep exploring and keep those historical wheels turning.